Why raise interest rates when inflation is high? So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of narrative, and a lot of opinions about it. I'm actually just going to read you some facts. Don't ever really get scripted, but I'm going to tell you 3 very specific reasons why interest rates are high during this inflationary period and is driving us into a recession that most of us have never lived through. We'll all get through it. That's probably the good news. We're all going to get through it. But without a team, systems, and mentoring and guidance to these financial decisions that you make every day, I would be scared to death out there, like a lot of you are. You live paranoid versus get educated. And you have to know, this too shall pass. It can be painful for some of you, or it could be successful for some of you. It depends on your willingness to get help. Some of you are self-sufficient and you're trying to do all this stuff alone, which means you are probably making grand mistakes. I actually had somebody on Ask Loral. I got to do a little rant on this because I was just on Ask Loral. And I said, oh my gosh, who did this to you? And she said, well, I did it. Wandering around the internet, setting up structures that made no sense for what their situation was, no sense for their tax strategy. So you might feel great that you figured it out alone. You might have been completely off base. And now you've got yourself deeper in a hole that's going to cost more to get out. So when we talk about interest rates and inflation, they go hand in hand. And the real question is, do you think this is helping you or hurting us as a country? The 3 things we're going to talk about, just the basic concepts. I'm going to give you some definitions of inflation and interest rates, how they tie together, how interest rates act as a tool to control inflation, right, and keep it kind of moderate. And then number 3, the practical effects of changing interest rates and why it's crucial. So let's begin. I'm actually going to read some definitions because I'm actually going to go on script for this. I want you to really get the facts and the details. So first, let's understand inflation as a decrease in purchasing power of a currency leading to high prices. Inflation means the same amount of money buys fewer goods and services over time, often due to the rising cost of goods and services. The pandemic was staged to do this. If you haven't seen it, right, we had ships full of supplies sitting offshore, not allowed to come onshore. So we could create this supply shortage, which creates a huge price. I mean, the fastest industry that felt it was construction. Construction felt it. It was so intense. Lumber doubled, cement tripled. It was insane. Supplies and just shipping the supplies once they got to whatever sort of a port to be shipped into the country was so backed up. It was insane what people had to pay to keep going to stay in business. And I want you to understand how now inflation also affects the consumer and the business in terms of spending and pricing. For consumers, inflation reduces their purchasing power because it makes it more expensive to buy what they used to buy, right? For now, some areas of the country, like $50 of groceries is now $150. The same exact, right, grocery cart that was $50 is now $150. And that is not an abnormal norm. I mean, we were just talking to a vendor of ours and they're increasing 22% and they're passing it all on to the consumer. I know people in my space that won't even pay your credit card fee anymore. They're passing the 3 to 5% that the business usually has to pay on to the consumer and saying, if you want to use your credit card, you got to pay for the charges. I mean, that's how the businesses are surviving, is passing the cost on to you. But if you have the same salary, what is that getting you? If you have the same income. So my mantra is you can all create more money, but you better get into the marketing and sales side of your life to do that. You've got to learn something about the Consumer Price Index, right? The CPI as a measure of inflation. CPI, right? Consumer Price Index measures the average change over time of what people buy in the market. The key indicator is used to gauge inflation and as an economy. So usually when people say, well, we're in a recession, it's because of the last 3 quarters downturn towards the market. So there are indicators that are already set. I go a different direction. Just if you look at accredited investors, that term, that structure was set in 1933. Most of this stuff was set when the banking system was formed in 1933. Are the indicators even accurate, or is it just what we've been used to for generations and generations of measuring a market, a recession, and inflation and the economy, right? That's why great world-leading economists exist, and I really honestly think there's only a few of them that are accurate. The role of interest rates, let's talk about that. To comprehend how interest rates represents the cost of borrowing and the reward for saving. Interest rates determine how much it costs to borrow money and how much you earn on savings. Lower rates make borrowing cheaper, so you can get more money, and savings less rewarding. So right now, why do you think banks are giving 4 and 5% on CDs? That's never been heard of, not in my lifetime. I mean, they're usually being paid 1.5, 2. If you can get 2.2, 2.4, that's like a great interest on a CD or even a savings account. Now you're seeing 4, 5s, and 6s on interest rates in savings account, but then the borrowing, if you wanted the money, you're now paying 8, 10, 12, 15%. Hard money in states like Nevada that have no limitation on lendability, I mean, you pretty much can do what we would consider usury laws in other states. You can charge 20% and you're not going to be in trouble in Nevada versus California. That would be an interest rate that's considered usury. Also on the interest rates, realizing that influence of central banks base rates on the broader economy. Central banks like the Federal Reserve, right, the Bank of England, et cetera, they base their rates on the influence of the interest rates charged by commercial banks. These rates impact everything from mortgage rates to the interest on savings accounts. So you have this enormous range. And in the commercial sectors, I mean, you're seeing 8, 9, and 10 on commercial properties right now. That really changes your IRR, right? Cap rate for anything that you're trying to do. Looking at, do I get back into the real estate space? Do I buy into the real estate space? Recognizing the impact of interest rates on consumer behavior and business decisions. So the lower the interest rate, it typically stimulates spending. It stimulates buying, people wanting to get into real estate, and especially the investment borrowing is cheaper. Higher interest rates slow down the economy, making the borrowing more expensive, but encouraging savings. So do you think the government's doing the right thing by doing what they're doing? Well, there's a lot of money sitting on the sideline making 5%. And there is a lot of projects that needs capital but can't get it because the borrowing is too expensive. So in a lot of ways, what you're seeing is stagnation into especially the U.S. economy right now. And with that is going to continue to push down a recession. Now, number 3. Actually, before we talk about number 3, the inverse relationship between inflation and interest rates, I want you to subscribe to our channel. I want you here 5 days a week. I want you to click that notification button and listen to the videos. Now, this one might be like economically boring to you compared to some of the other fun videos that I do, but you do need to know this stuff, especially if you're somebody that's looking at buying and selling a home, if you're looking at buying and selling or refinancing any sort of properties that you have, or making a decision between, are you going to keep your money in savings and CDs, or are you going to actually grow up into better asset classes that can produce 15, 18, 22%, right, in an ROI to you? So at any point while you're out here on my channel, please share my videos. Share, like, comment, and comment specifically on any topics that you want me to talk about that I don't talk about. Last thing, the inverse relationship between inflation and interest rates. So you need to understand that the lower the interest rate, it can obviously increase your spending, right? Because you're not going to pay as much for the money, and it will increase, and potentially you'll have higher inflation because of it. When interest rates are low, people are more inclined to borrow and spend rather than save. The increased spending can drive up demand, leading to higher prices, which then cause inflation. That is not what will really happen. We're actually at the effect, I believe, of the pandemic and the supply demand that was intentionally created to create the inflation, not what I just suggested as a way of the inverse relationship. Learning why high interest rates encourage saving, reduce spending, and potentially lower inflation. Higher interest rate makes, again, borrowing's more expensive, but savings is more lucrative if you count a couple points as lucrative. So as far as a business investment, where do you go right now? There's probably about 3 recession-proof kinds of investments. iFlip, which is a gift I'm going to give you. It's an app that a lot of us use in our community. So go ahead and click on the link below so you can get iFlip. It actually takes you out of the market so you don't get the hits. You don't get those big negative hits that you might feel otherwise. And if your park and pray financial planner says it's okay, you're in for the long haul, it's okay to lose 30 and 20%, absolutely unacceptable in any wealthy person's portfolio. You're parking your money, you're praying something's going to happen, and it's not. It's not designed to in their models. The other inflation and recession-proof investment is really proper life insurance. So go to my search bar above and look up life insurance, and you'll meet my partner Jason out there. And there's some great opportunities that you can just look at and just get educated during this time. That's what I would tell people in a recession. If you're feeling stagnant and stuck, just get educated, lean in, learn more, get more knowledge before you make any decisions. And if you want, I mean, truly, like, come closer to us, go to Ask Loral, ask a question, make a request. We're out there 24/7 just to help you make smarter decisions. So in summary, why raise interest rates while inflation is high? It discourages excessive borrowing and spending. It encourages savings, which I really don't like that word. I'd rather have it encourage investing, but people aren't doing that. They're not knowledgeable enough. It reduces the money supply completely. It lowers the demand to match supply, and worse, the psychological impact, because most of you don't know. So the higher interest rates signal that businesses and consumers and the central bank is taking action to control inflation, and the real influence of an expected behavior is leading to really conservative spending. I mean, we're seeing such a restriction back into the market, especially the capital markets. If you're trying to raise capital for any project, whether it's real estate, cannabis, gas and oil. It's really restrictive out there right now. So again, you got to get a team, you got to get a system, you got to get some money rules. Stay right here, listen to our channel. We'll be back tomorrow.